Give it that 10-second buffer.
Okay.
Hi, welcome back to Unique Minds of the Okanagan. I'm Robb, and I'm sitting with Kris Heidt. We're on location in West Kelowna. How you doing?
Hey, Rob. Good. How are you?
I'm doing good, buddy. It's good to have you on the show for the first time, because I've been wanting to have a sit down and talk with you about everything that's happened over the past couple of years.
Thanks.
So why don't you let the people know basically who you are, where you're from, and how you got into production.
How I got into production? Well, that's a long story.
Audio engineering production.
Yeah. I'm Kris. I run a recording studio. It's called Pure Sound Recording here in West Kelowna. And how did it start? I guess it started when I was 5 years old. My mom put me in violin lessons. And then by the time I was 10, I decided I wanted to learn trumpet, and trumpet became my main instrument. I gave up violin. And then as I was growing up, I learned a few other instruments: guitar, piano, drums. And then I started writing songs, and I decided I wanted to start recording songs. So in my early 20s, I bought my first microphone and my first recording rig for a computer. And then it's interesting what happened. I took more interest in the recording aspect than I did in music. So I kept chasing better sound quality with my recordings, which took up more time. And so I spent more time chasing good recordings and less time actually focusing on the music component. So over the last 20 years, so that was about 20 years ago. And since then, as a musician, I've been gradually declining, but as a recording engineer, it's been increasing, and I've kept just buying more gear. My recordings always sucked. Like 20 years ago, my recordings were terrible. And so I always just thought I needed more gear, more equipment, better microphones, better computer, and just all the equipment. So I kept buying more gear. And then I realized that it was more of an issue of me not using the gear properly. That's why my recordings weren't good. And about 10 years ago, 5 to 10 years ago, I hit the threshold of like finally getting good recordings. And then I realized that you can get really good recordings even with inexpensive gear. So what I started doing is I took a bit of a passion in low-cost recording equipment, because I had learned that you can get like very close to the same kind of results with very inexpensive recording gear as you can with the expensive stuff if you know what you're doing, if you have the proper setup and the proper room acoustics and everything else. And so that kind of became a new passion of mine, to help other people get really great recordings with inexpensive equipment. And I started a microphone. I found a specific brand of microphones that performed extremely well for the price, and I became the North American distributor for that brand. Because nobody else was selling them. Like I stumbled upon the brand by accident. I couldn't buy them, so I decided, well, I'm gonna open up a little online store and start selling them myself. And then that led me to, I guess I'm getting ahead of myself here. That led me to starting the YouTube channel, mostly to showcase the microphones, but then also to showcase how you can get really good quality recordings with inexpensive gear. So I guess like my transition from a musician to a producer would have more to do with my passion of sound engineering taking over my passion of being a musician.
I find that really interesting, because it's usually musicians will stick to being a musician, and producers will be producers, or audio engineers they'll go to school for audio engineering because they find that passion. I think you stumbled upon your passion unknowingly, which has led to like your entire musical career, in the sense that now you like you said, you went from being a musician to be getting interested into good, beautiful recordings with cheap gear, which is when me and you roughly met, and when you had ISK, and to see the progression from where you were then a few years ago to now it's quite amazing. Even with your Facebook groups, like you've become almost a guru unknowingly, like just kind of the path and direction that you're on has led you to be this online audio engineering guru, and like you were talking about it, which that's led you to your YouTube channel, which now you are doing more than you're doing engineering, as we were talking about. So why don't you tell people how that transition from going from recording artists and bands to now you're having to full-time be like a guru almost because of your YouTube channel blowing up so quickly.
Yeah, it's been a really fun transition actually. So it started, I guess, with my transition into video, which started maybe around 10 years ago, because I had just a regular DSLR camera, right? And then we set it up on a tripod once to make a video showcasing some microphones, and it actually took pretty good video. And then in a ballpark of 6 years ago, I lent my camera out to a buddy, and he shot a music video with it, and it turned out fantastic. Like, I was like, wow, this camera can actually do really good video. So then I got into video. I got into videography at that point too, because I realized, well, I've got the gear. Because before that, I didn't realize that that you don't need an expensive camera either. Like, even a relatively inexpensive photo camera that has a video option can do professional quality videos. Okay. And learning about video was surprisingly easy, because like I kind of thought, okay, this is going to be another big endeavor, just like audio, because audio is really complex. It took me a long time to learn, but video wasn't. Like, I just watched, I'm not going to lie, it wasn't like super easy, but like a few hours worth of YouTube tutorial videos, and I had a grasp on it. And then probably like a few months or a year of hands-on, like actually making videos, trying the concepts out. But within a year, I was actually pretty good at making videos. And so that helped me transition to making better YouTube videos. I had already started making YouTube videos, but they weren't very good quality. They were, like, looking back at them now, I'm embarrassed.
I think that's a running theme through most YouTubers, though. Is where they start to where they get. But
yeah. So the transition from audio engineer to YouTuber. Yeah, so I guess it went from learning that I can do video, and that the video was surprisingly easy to get a grasp on, like not just camera and the settings and that stuff, but lighting as well. The lighting's an important part. And then I decided, so the YouTube channel started out as me wanting to promote my microphones that I'm selling. And so I started making an online audio engineering course that the plan was to just put it on YouTube for free. And I created the entire course syllabus, like all the lessons from start to finish. There was 82 lessons in total. Each one would have been about a half-hour video. This was a major project.
Wow.
And I was expecting it to take me years. Well, it kind of did take me years, but I never finished it. I made it into like video into the 30s. I got fairly far with it, the audio engineering course. And then I realized that these YouTube videos for like audio engineering type stuff, they're not doing well on YouTube. Like, they're getting very few views. So then I decided, okay, I'm going to start trying to make some YouTube videos that, rather than try to teach a specific component of like audio engineering. So for instance, like I have a video that explains, like in the audio engineering course that I was working on, like there's a video that explains the physics of sound waves, right? So like, you know, you put that up on YouTube, the physics of sound waves, and a fancy little thumbnail of like sound wave kind of looking thing. And I think it, like, over the 5 or 6 years that it's been on there, it's got like maybe 800 views, like next to nothing. And that's actually one of my most educational videos. Like, there's really, really good information on that video, but because it's not a fancy, it's not a fancy topic. It's not sensational.
Very niche.
Yeah. The majority of people who are watching YouTube to learn audio engineering, they just want the quick and easy, the quick and easy thing that's gonna immediately take their recordings up to a professional level. They just want to watch one video and kind of like what I did with my videography, you know, just watch a couple YouTube videos and be pro at it. And unfortunately with audio engineering, I think it's more complicated than video. It takes more. You got to dive deep and really understand the concepts and the physics and what's going on, like why things behave the way they do. And that's kind of what I focused on with my audio engineering courses, explaining the core concepts, but the vast majority of people watching YouTube don't want to learn the core concepts. They want that video that says how to make your how to make your vocals sound amazing in 3 simple steps. And so that was I was kind of late in the game to make that realization, like seeing all these other YouTube channels doing really well. And I was getting like mad because I would watch their videos that do so well, and I was like, this content is really garbage. Like this isn't good. Like this isn't what people struggle with. But those are the videos getting views. Yeah. And so I had to switch my entire strategy of how I'm going at YouTube, because really I should have been getting mad at myself, because like I'm the one that's not getting, like, my YouTube. I struggled with my YouTube channel for probably about 5 years, making 3 or 4 or 5, I can't remember the timeline too well, but many years where I got very few views, and I worked at it really hard. And I think that was the main thing, is that I wasn't making my videos sensational enough. I was focusing more on what I think people need rather than what I think people want. Because what people want and what people need are 2 different things. Most people don't know what they need, but they know what they want.
Yeah, no,
and so to give them what they need, well, they don't know that they need it, so they're not gonna view the content. So I kind of switched strategies, but it's important to me to maintain good ethics. I don't want to be one of those YouTubers that just gives like surface level content that is sensational but doesn't actually help people. So that's been a bit of a struggle, but I found a niche specific with audio interface reviews. And I think with my channel, that's the specific niche that I kind of wedged myself into, and I found that I'm actually kind of good at it. And there aren't a lot of other YouTubers who do a good job of reviews. There's one other YouTuber who does audio interface reviews, and he's fantastic at it. But he doesn't run a pro studio. He just reviews the interface and talks about like the specs and the noise floor and what this interface does well, what it doesn't do well, but he doesn't actually use them. So I kind of came at it from a different approach, where I actually do use the interfaces. I spend some time with them, get to know them, record some people, record some bands, and I've recorded with a lot of other audio interfaces. So I've got a good comparison of how audio interfaces compare to each other and what they're like for their price. So I have a very focused niche that I became fairly knowledgeable in and fairly good at. And that's the majority of what my YouTube channel is now, is audio interface reviews.
Okay, so you've gravitated from actual audio engineering courses to doing reviews of gear. Do you find that working with different like products and new products, like different audio interfaces and things like that, do you find that you found some that are, this is just a personal question, like some lower brands that are better than some of the bigger ones?
Well, that's a tough one.
Because everyone's so focused on the main brands, and then you're getting to work with brands that are up and coming, which is kind of a really unique
I would
endeavor.
Say, some of the lower brands definitely can perform. It's a difficult question to answer, because like I do a lot of testing, and in testing, the cheaper brands don't perform as well as the more expensive brands. Like there definitely is a trend, but the difference in performance is not relative to the price difference. And I would even argue that it's not even audible. Like for 99% of people who have a home recording studio, and that's most of what my viewership is people with home recording studios. They play an instrument, play piano or whatever. They want to, kind of like how I started, they just want to record their own music and not have to travel to a studio and pay for studio time and pay someone else to do something that they could just do themselves. So yeah, some of the really inexpensive brands for home recording studio level of quality, there wouldn't be an audible difference between, like, I can think of an audio interface that costs $100, and you could put it side to side with a similar audio interface that costs $1,000, and I don't think anybody would hear a difference.
That's that's what I often wonder, because like I can't hear specific things when it comes to like producing music. So like when it comes to like frequencies between interfaces, or like with hearing the difference between speakers, that's really difficult for me, which is why I kind of steered away from audio engineering, because
Okay.
like I can produce music, I can write it out, I can make a structure, but when it comes to like the magic of production, I was like, what I call production is, it's a whole other level. I find it's a science. And I think that you're getting onto a different level where you're getting to work with gear. I think it's unique, like super cool to see somebody that I know getting to work with gear to a point where they're getting to do the reviews and they're working with new and upcoming companies, because like I've worked with the same Roland Edirol interface for 15 years.
Yeah.
I've never needed to buy a new one, and I bought it for like $100 because it does
Yeah.
what it does.
Yeah.
But I can't hear the difference between the different interfaces. So I find it funny that like you brought that up, that you can't audibly hear.
Well, and
You know,
I did a video actually comparing the sound quality of headphone output. So all these audio interfaces have a headphone output, and it really bothered me that, like, I'd be reading on Facebook or on forums and people say like, oh, I bought this new interface, it sounds way better than my other one, like I could immediately hear a huge difference, and I was never able to hear this difference. So I set up my own test. I'm like, okay, are these people just, is it confirmation bias? Is it kind of like a placebo effect or something going on here, where they want their new audio interface to sound better, so they're tricking themselves into thinking it does sound better? Or does it really sound better? Like, is there really a difference? So I set up some testing to compare the sound quality of these audio interfaces, and I never heard a difference. And I set up the testing very rigid. Like I created a setup where I've got a button that switches between them seamlessly, and I could close my eyes, and it was a blind test, so I wouldn't know which one I'm listening to, and it would switch back and forth. And I could not hear a difference between like the $100 audio interface and the $1,000 audio interface. And I was using expensive headphones, like really high quality gear. And then I thought, okay, well, maybe this is just me. Maybe it's my ears. So I had 3 other people, 2 of which are also audio type people, like audio engineers, I guess, musicians. One is a professional producer. Another is a semi-professional performer. And he does his own audio engineering as well. Anyways, yeah, I had a couple other people who did the same test. And we spent like an hour with each person, just switching through with one question. Can you reliably, like predictably hear a difference? And none of them, nobody could. And this is with like expensive headphones, like really high quality gear. Nobody could hear any difference between any of these audio interfaces. So, and I've got a video about like showcasing that, which, you know, that's another video that's not performing very well, which I think it's one of the most interesting things.
yeah, that's not a topic you'd actually think about. I don't think anybody would think about using like listening into the output jack, like the headphones. Like, have you noticed a difference between? Because I'm wondering that now, if it's my headphones or if it's just the headphone jack in my headphones that makes my mixes sound so different.
Probably your headphones, 'cause,
Right?
yeah, it's pretty cool where audio recording technology in the last 10 years has reached a level where it's extremely good at a very low price point. So 20, 30 years ago, there were significant differences between the cheap stuff and the expensive stuff. But the expensive stuff from 20 years ago, like the best of the best recording gear 20 years ago, was just as good as what some of the dirt cheap stuff is now.
Yeah, I could see that. And like, to touch back on the mics that you did too, because like I can personally say I've used the ISK mic at every performance
Oh, yeah, right on.
since I bought it.
Yeah.
Like I replaced my Shure mic with it because I enjoyed the sound. It is a lot brighter. It sounds way better live than my Shure SM whatever 58 or whatever.
Yeah.
And I got a new Shure, and I can hear the difference between them. And it's funny
Yeah.
that Shure is the top of the line, and ISK was a small company that you brought in to Western Canada, I'll pick the ISK over a Shure any day.
Yeah.
So
I think
it's
Shure
cool.
was top of the line 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But they haven't changed. Well, like the SM58, the mic you just mentioned, came out in the 1960s, I think.
Yeah.
Like, name one other piece of technology that hasn't changed in 50 years in both the item itself and the price point.
Yeah.
You know, like I compare it to TVs from the 1960s or 70s. Like, look at how much drastically, like it just shows how much the technology and mostly the production of mass production in like China's leading the mass production realm of the world. And 20 years ago, they were mass producing stuff that was really low quality. But in the last 10 years, it kind of went from low quality to medium quality, and now they're getting into high quality.
Yeah.
Like not just in the audio, it's throughout the technology industry. Like drones, they make, and this is just my opinion, but I think they make the best drones. They make some of the best video cameras, and there's some really high-end stuff coming out of China that's really inexpensive. And when you compare like manufacturing, like if you look at our iPhones, or if you look at a smartphone and just the screen on it, like there's, I don't know how many thousands, tens of thousands of tiny little pixels on there, and they've just got a machine just chunk, 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 chunk. So previously, like in the 90s, you couldn't manufacture stuff that high of quality with that much precision at a mass production rate, right? Like the really high quality, precise stuff was all done by hand, like making a microphone capsule, for instance. Like that had to be done by hand, and it was meticulously put in place. But now they've got machines to chunk that can do it way more accurate than any human. Like no human can possibly build those pixels on a smart screen, right?
No, it's true.
Like the accuracy of the mass production is unbelievably better than what a human can do by hand. And the mass production is just like down the assembly line, chunk, that the most expensive part is the materials themselves.
Yes.
And that's pretty cheap.
And that, yeah, especially when you're in the area where it's sourced and built.
Yeah.
So it's definitely, and you can see the quality, I think, drop in a lot of these bigger names, because that's like Gibson. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Gibson has hands down been one of the biggest guitar names in history, but the quality has dramatically dropped.
Has it dropped or maintained the same?
I think they've dropped.
Oh.
Honestly, I think when they stopped making them by hand is when everything went down the hill, right? So, because like I have a Gibson and it won't stay in tune for the life of it. And I have a $50 Nova. It never goes out of tune. You know what I mean? So like, I feel like my personal preference is like, I try to steer away from bigger brands, because I feel like, I think I'm always like, I root for the underdog. So I'm always looking for somebody who is building themselves up, whether it's a small company, a band or something. But I just like I said with ISK, it was a small company that I fell in love with, and I still use to this day. It's still my performance mic, and everyone sees it and they're like, what is this? Better than what you got. Because I enjoy it. I genuinely think the sound is better, even with that. For me, for somebody who can barely hear a difference in that kind of stuff, like I can hear an audible difference between the brightness in my vocals with the ISK versus the Shure. It's very blah, it's very muddy, mid.
Which ISK mic are you using?
I can't remember which one. It was the one that was replicated as the 58, I believe.
Oh, okay.
I can't remember which one it is.
Yeah, no, I know which one. Yeah, the ICDM.
Yes, and it's amazing.
Oh yeah, that's a killer mic.
It's amazing. And like, so to start like your YouTube channel with like, started basically with the reviews of these microphones, and you've gravitated into this unique market of like reviewing products, I think is a cool transition, because like the story itself, from being a musician to now being a person who is, I want to say, leading, at least in our area. Like, you're one of the only people I know who does not just gear reviews, but to a level where you're actually doing tests, not just like plugging in, doing a quick video and getting the credit for it, right? Like, you're spending hours with other people, like We want to get an actual answer. And that's where I'm like, you're more of a scientist when it comes to like the audio engineering.
I think that's kind of, I like that. I like that perspective. And I think that's what I'm trying to do, because that's the information that I wanted to find. Like when I was researching gear before I had like, when I was just starting out as a recording engineer, these are the questions that I had and I couldn't find answers. And I desperately wanted to find like what equipment sounded good, you know, because I wasn't getting good recordings for the longest time, and I had really expensive equipment. And so I was just like so stumped. And then one day I found a brand of microphones that sounded like really good for a fraction of the price. It wasn't ISK. But that's what kind of started, that's when the light bulb went off, that like price doesn't equal performance.
Mm-hmm.
And I like what you said earlier about like rooting for the underdog, right? Because I've been seeing that a lot in the last 10, 15 years, where the well-established brands are taking advantage of their reputation, and rightfully so. I mean, they've worked hard for a long time to earn that reputation. So they've earned it, and they have the right to charge a premium for their products. But for me, as just the home recording engineer, I don't need that well-known brand name stamped on it. I just want whatever sounds the best for the money. And a lot of newer companies, just with the improvement in production methods and techniques, right? So they can make products that are just as good as the expensive brands for a fraction of the price and sell it for a lot cheaper. You just got to find which brands they are. Some of the cheap brands are garbage, right? It's hit and miss.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I had found a brand that I was really impressed with for the price, and that was ISK, and I started selling it. But not only did I go down that path, but I also kind of, that's what started a path for me of being really interested and having a passion for finding this low-cost equipment, low-cost recording gear that sounds really good for the price. And now I'm starting to stream my channel in that direction. But I can't just say like, yeah, this sounds amazing for the price, because you get the critics, right, who say, oh, that sounds terrible. And I can't say they're right or wrong. You know, if it's just my opinion, I can't argue it. And that's what all the other YouTubers do anyways. They don't do tests. They don't do like objective testing that like you could say definitively, yes, this performs at this level compared to these other pieces of gear. The other YouTubers, and this is one of the things that frustrates me about them, like they'll just listen to it, put on the headphones, and then I can tell that they're acting. They'll just be like, wow, this sounds amazing, when I know from my test it doesn't sound any different. So that's what got me into the objective testing, where I demonstrate exactly like, here's how the headphone output sounds. And that's like an objective test of sound quality. But then I also test, okay, well, what is the noise floor? Even though I can't hear the noise floor, what is it? There's going to be a noise floor, and it's going to be different on all these audio interfaces.
Yeah.
So then I'll test and I'll measure what the noise floor actually is. And then I'll put a little comparison chart on the YouTube video of the noise floor of all these different audio interfaces. And then I also test the noise floor of the preamps. I test the transparency of the inputs and outputs of the audio interface. So there's all these different components and all these different audio circuits within the audio interface. And I test all of them to see how they sound in a usable way, like how this would affect the average person in their home studio. So I'm not just spitting a bunch of specifications at people that they don't understand. I explain it in a way that like, here's why this is relevant for you in your home recording studio.
Yeah. And I think that's the hardest thing too, because like you said, a lot of the videos online, like even for myself trying to learn how to become more self-sufficient with my music and being able to record at home, but not on a level where I'm not going to put those out on Spotify, kind of a thing. Just for me to send to the band, but not have Andy be like, that sounds like trash because it's an MP3 on an MP3 that sounds garbage. But so like those are the things I don't understand, but I can see that what you do is something that most people wouldn't think of, as we're like, they're just reviewing. They're being like the typical, oh, wow, it sounds good. Yes, check this product out, which is how I view people doing reaction videos to like breakdowns. You know, like,
Okay,
oh, this
yeah.
is so heavy. It's cool. You can tell they're acting. There's
Yeah.
no genuine, like, they've heard the song before. They're not. It's not the first time.
Yeah, yeah.
And with you, you're testing these things out, and you're answering questions that I don't think people have asked. So when they come to answer or ask those questions, the answer is there for them, like what you didn't have, which is needed, especially in an industry where people do a lot of talk and not a lot of, there's not a lot of action behind it. So like a lot of people can say this sounds better and this is going to help your recording, but how? You know, like, how does it help my recording? Just pressing record doesn't do anything if you don't understand the machines and the instruments you're working with. To break them down to a level where you're pulling a Stephen Hawking in my mind. Like, you're breaking them down completely to rebuild them, to
like
understand
the individual
what they
components.
are. Yes.
And talking about the quality level of these individual components.
Which is it not only helps the audio engineer and the musician, but I think it's information that a lot of other producers don't even think about. Or like moving on to other companies that quality is better but less expensive. Most people think they need them high end. We need to have the best of the best, or our studio doesn't look good and we can't put out the best music with our best looking studio. Like, that's not the mentality you need. Oh.
I'll just hit decline on that.
No worries. But I feel like to try and put it down into like words is a little difficult, because you've created something that I don't think anybody expected or asked. Like, you're answering questions that nobody had thought of before, because
I think people don't want to know.
Yeah. Like that's kind of what I'm trying to get at. It's like you're almost like a philosopher in the audio engineering world, because you're touching on things that people are like, I'm gonna steer clear of that and just hit record. But to understand, you're understanding music and sound at a total different level than other producers that I've spoke to.
It's a level beyond what's audible. And like I said previously, because there isn't an audible difference unless you get into the extreme ends of like recording extremely loud sources or extremely quiet sources. But for most applications, there's not a significant difference in the sound quality of this gear. And I think what you were touching on is, like, a lot of people want the best gear available. Like, they're starting their own little home recording studio and they want the best of the best. They want professional results. And I see a lot of people fall into this trap where they've got some money to spend on it, and so they just go buy the most expensive piece of gear. And this is what I did when I was starting out. Even like, I just bought really expensive equipment, and I expected that would give me great recordings.
I'm guilty of it too.
And that was one of the big revelations throughout my career and my journey as an audio engineer, was that these really expensive, the really expensive stuff doesn't sound significantly, not significantly better than the really cheap stuff, especially in the last 5 years. The technology has gotten so good. Like, the noise floor of really expensive recording equipment has gotten so low that it competes with some of the best stuff that was available 20, 30 years ago. And they were making great sounding recordings 20, 30 years ago, right?
Pardon me.
So there's a lot of this, like, people just wanting to get the very best gear, and they're focusing their budget in the wrong places too. Because that was another mistake that I had made starting out, was that I thought I just needed a great audio interface and great microphones, and those were the most important things. But I was wrong, because what I learned later was that, well, those are actually some of the least important things. Your room acoustics and your monitoring speakers are a lot more important than the quality of your microphone. And I've demonstrated that with some YouTube videos where, and again, these videos don't get a lot of views. It's like,
which is what I find funny, because I feel like they're ahead of their time. I feel like you've got the information there, and it's just waiting to be found.
Yeah.
Because like that's one thing I've always wondered, is the difference between speakers. Because I have Yorkvilles. Listening to them, they sound great.
Well, with
then
speakers,
you listen to a mix, and it's so bassy and so mid that like there's just between speakers, there's such a different sound, and
Yeah.
trying to understand how to get that perfection is the hardest thing for me. And it comes down to like I said, I have a crappy interface. I have great microphones. I'm never been happy with my mixes because of my monitors.
Yeah.
And I've looked into other types of monitors and like KRKs, and like those are just top of the line ones. And it's like I don't fully trust them after buying the Yorkvilles to go with another high end brand because I was so disappointed with spending $400 per monitor. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and the sound quality when I'm listening to it sounds great on my end, but when I'm done mixing and exporting, there's so many changes I got to go in. So I got to like take bass down where it sounds no
Yeah.
bass on my mix, and
Yeah.
those
And
kind of
that's-
things drive me nuts.
That's a common thing that people struggle with. Because I guess I've been talking about how much the technology has been improving and you can get really great stuff for cheap. But I think monitor speakers are an exception to that. They haven't improved in quality at the same rate as other pieces of recording equipment. And monitors are still, there aren't any really good monitors for really cheap that I know of. There's some that are decent for like, it is getting better anyways.
Yeah. The price range for gear is not cheap, and even
No.
the low end gear is still a couple $100, you know, like
For monitors, yeah.
yeah. And I mean, I bought those 10 years ago,
Yeah.
so they're probably nowhere near what's out now. You know what I mean?
No, like I said, monitors haven't improved as much as other equipment. And monitors are the one thing that is still expensive to get really good quality. I think other parts of the technology, you can get really good quality for cheap, but not monitors.
So yeah, like advice wise for musicians, then focus on your monitors.
Yes. Yeah. Like if I'm looking at a picture of a home studio and I'm trying to like get an internal assessment of like, okay, we're all judgmental. I think we all do it. We look at a picture of a studio and try to assume what kind of quality they're outputting. And the factors that go into the equation for me in my head, I look at the studio. The number one most important thing is what are they using for monitors? How good are their speakers? And if they've got really great speakers, they're probably outputting really great recordings. And then the second most important variable would be their room acoustics. How I try to get an eye of the room. Like, is it a bedroom? Is it an 8-foot ceiling, a 10-foot ceiling? Is it vaulted? I'm not even really looking at what they got for acoustic treatment. Like, treatment comes secondary. The actual room itself is like the shape and size. It's a big factor in what kind of quality you can produce. So what I advise people in my Facebook group is if you're starting a studio from scratch, I advise a third of the budget on just monitoring. Your monitors should be the single most important thing in your studio.
Okay. That's good advice too, because it's something that like I always thought a smaller space, like a closed off sound spot for vocals at least. So like is that the vocal room right there?
It is.
Okay, so like
Yeah.
I had one that was about half that size, and that's what I was working with for years.
Yeah,
For
and that's
vocals, but then you try and do anything else in there?
well, and that's another. It's a misconception that, and I don't know where these misconceptions come from, but actually, the bigger the space, the better.
Okay.
And I put a lot of room into that vocal booth. We'll get a camera shot of it, so that there's no reflections. Like the walls in there, you can see it's fabric, and then you can even see a little bit of the 2x4 going up.
Yeah.
So it's fabric covering, and then it's all sound deadening insulation on the inside, and then
Okay.
fabric on the outside. So there's zero internal reflections.
Wow.
And
So it's dead in there when you walk in there.
Yeah, it's-
like
it's
even
very dead.
in here, walking from outside into here,
yeah,
it always gets me all, it like catches me off guard because it is so silent in this room.
yeah, there's like no reflections.
No, it's incredible, and I think the mics will love it. But
That's the idea.
right, so to get back to the YouTube, do you find that as your channel's grown, because like I was saying to you off camera, about a month and a half ago, I looked at your YouTube channel as I was prepping for the series to get my interviews locked in.
Yeah.
And your channel was sitting at 10,000. A month and a half later, now you're just under 20. So you've gained 10,000 followers in less than a month and a half. How are you going about the speed? Like, is it catching you off guard, or are you finally, is it like, this is what I've worked towards and it's time it's happened? Because I feel that with YouTubers, a lot of us are, it needs to be done now. And if it doesn't happen, it's not going to.
Well, it took like 5 or 6 years of, I was probably getting like a subscriber a week.
Right?
Maybe a subscriber a day. It's hard to quantify it. But for many years, I put a lot of work and a lot of effort into this YouTube channel with, let's call it, almost zero growth.
Mm-hmm.
And then I found and then I kind of found my niche of audio interface reviews, and I put a lot of work into these videos, and I spent a lot of my own money. I went and bought over a dozen audio interfaces. So this has cost me a lot of money. I spent months just working with these audio interfaces and establishing my testing methods, because I wanted to do tests that are different than the mainstream. The mainstream tests basically show numbers that are relevant, like specifications. They're relevant if you know what those specifications mean and you know how to interpret that data, but they're not relevant for the majority of home studios that they don't know what equivalent input noise is. They don't know what self noise is of a microphone. So rather than talk about the numbers, I demonstrate why this is relevant and how it affects the recordings. And I demonstrate against all the other audio interfaces, all the other gear that I've tested. I say, okay, this one was number 3 in this category. This one's number 4 in this category. And there isn't really one audio interface that scores consistently number 1 in all categories, right? So it makes it tricky for people. They say they want the best. And then it's like, well, this one's the best in this category, but not the best in all the other categories. So,
I guess that's kind of like everything with gear, though, right? Like guitars and drums. It's all kind of the same concept where you have that physical thing and you're wanting it to sound perfect, but it doesn't always translate. Like drums, like for example, drums are probably the biggest pain when it comes to recording
I'd agree.
because of the simple tones. Like, oh, that is not in tune, or it's just humming on a weird frequency that drives you nuts. And like, I can hear that because drumming is my instrument.
Yeah.
And I can tell that, but how do you dampen? Like, people don't understand the steps. You know what I mean? Like, I'm definitely guilty of it. How do I get the best out of as quick as possible?
Yes.
Without understanding the history, the knowledge behind why it's better. So I think as a person I'm very hands-on. I need to learn something physically. I can't read it and comprehend. So I feel like what you do helps people like me way greater than any specs could, if that makes sense, because you're physically, this is why it sounds better. This is why this is better. The translation between the viewer and the host is there versus trying to like listen to some dude who works for Yorkville telling you the specs and buy this product.
That's right. I'm not trying to sell anything.
No, and that's the thing I love is that it's a unbiased view where to get the best sound, where a lot of people don't understand where sound even really, what sound is. Like, yeah, we hear noise, we hear people talk, we hear cars, that's sound to most people. But to understand it on the wavelengths and the frequencies and, like you said, how things bounce off of walls, like a lot of people don't think of that. No, and if they do, they don't fully understand it, right?
Yeah.
And I think that your channel is like, as it's growing, I think it kind of shows for itself that you found your niche and it's working. Do you think that you're going to go and push towards not just interfaces, but do you think you'll use that same structure on other gear? Because I know that you've already done reviews, but the way that you're going about these videos that are blowing up to 500,000 views, you know what I mean? Like, they're not small views. Like, your channel is growing massive overnight. Like you were saying, you're getting 30 followers a day now, where it was
Yeah.
maybe one.
Yeah, between 20 and 40 followers, new
That's
subscribers per day.
that's wicked. Most people don't see that. So it just shows that the hard work you're putting in is paying off, even if it's a small group of people.
Hmm.
Have you seen, like, how do I phrase this? Have you seen the transition from your regular viewers who are coming just for the reviews, stick around, because like, you can see that in analytics, and stick around for
Yeah.
other videos?
Yeah.
Like, oh, he has audio engineering courses. Cool, I'm gonna dive into that. Those 30 episodes. Like, I think that's where you built these videos that you think are not going to blow up or are going nowhere or have garnered less views. I think those are the those are the holy grails of your knowledge that it will get found. Starting with your reviews, they get hooked on what you do, what you offer, and then they start to see, oh, he's got reviews for this, and he does tests for this. He's done his own microphones, and I think they'll slowly gravitate to the rest of the other videos to absorb that knowledge that you
is the
offer.
goal. Now those educational videos on my channel, I'm starting to delete a lot of them. They were done like 5 years ago or something. Like the production quality is like, I'm borderline ashamed of it. Like,
That's what I was saying. Do you think you're going to go about
yes,
redoing these videos
yes.
with the new structure that you find works?
Yes.
And I think that with the extra years of knowledge too, you've kind of harnessed new things that maybe didn't work in the old video that you're like, that doesn't actually, that's not what I mean now, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So I think the fact that your channel's growing and redoing those to get that knowledge out in a different sense is kind of what I was saying. Like, moving towards that will make it go from 20,000 to 20 million.
Well, my goal with that won't be to increase my subscribership. So I do plan to redo all those educational videos and make them at a more professional quality. Like the quality that they're at right now, the content is good, but the video quality is not good. And my charisma on camera isn't as good as well. Like, I hadn't figured out, I'm not good at talking on camera.
I'd say you are. I'd say you're pretty good at talking on camera. You're very even like, I'm watching your videos. I love watching your videos because it's captivating. It's not just you talking to a camera and feeling like, how do I, like, there's videos that I watch where people talk to the camera.
Yeah.
And you can just tell there's nothing behind it. You know, they're just talking to the camera for views. That's where you're passionate about what you're talking about. It transcends through the screen. Like, people are captivated by it.
Yeah, I can see that.
And I think that that's what, I think, honestly, I think redoing your educational videos isn't a bad thing, because I think the education is what's needed. I just think that it has to be done in a level that people don't want to learn. Like, we love knowledge, but we don't want to learn if it's going to take an hour. You know, like, people want to learn now as quick as possible. And I think that is the detriment to humans.
Yeah.
Because to sit down with someone and learn something, whether it's through a screen or in person, is magical. There's something magical about that, and just getting everything as quick as possible. I don't know. It's like fast food knowledge, you know? Like,
yeah.
I'd rather have my steak and potatoes than a burger.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what you offer, is a steak and potatoes with knowledge.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
It is. And the struggle with that is that that's not what people are after on YouTube. They don't want the steak and potatoes. They just want the dessert.
Yeah.
And so what I'm thinking of doing is redoing all those educational videos and monetizing it in a way that you have to subscribe to. You have to, sorry, not subscribe. You have to. YouTube has a relatively new feature where you can, what's it called?
Community. The community base.
Yeah. Where you pay money, you become a member of the channel for a fee, and I'll just make it a small fee. Like, it'd be really small, like borderline insignificant, but at least it's something. Because I feel like if you make a tutorial video, like how sound waves bounce within your room, right? If I put that on YouTube, I know right now it's not going to get a lot of views because it's free. But if you make a tutorial series and say, I'm selling this, this acoustics course for $5. I think people give it more legitimacy if they have to pay money for it and they'll actually watch it.
Because it's a course.
Because now it's a paid course. So that's
weird mentality.
my plan. It is. If it's free, yeah. And well, I've experienced that with the microphones as well, where my microphones are so inexpensive, people didn't buy them because they thought it was low quality.
Yeah, I've had people ask me about the microphones, and then I show them, and they're like, "Oh, it just seems like a small company." I'm like, "The quality is there.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how big the company is. Everyone starts somewhere."
Yeah. So that's always been kind of a struggle of mine, is trying to wrap my head around the mentality of people who the value of something is in the price of it, right? So if you're giving something away for free or cheap, then like on YouTube where it's free, basically, I mean, nothing's free on YouTube. You're paying with your time of watching the ads. That's how YouTube makes money. They just, they don't care if your content is good or not. They just want the ads. They just want to bring in revenue from ads. So yeah, so that's my plan moving forward, is to start monetizing certain aspects. Because the YouTube channel, even though I've got like almost 20,000 subscribers, it doesn't actually make much money. Like it's not even like it's next to nothing.
Yeah,
So,
and that's one thing I wanted to ask is like, how do you balance having to create content on a level where you can sustain and grow while managing working and family? Like, has it become difficult as your channel's grown to kind of pick and choose where your time's going to go?
it hasn't become difficult as the channel's grown because I've always been putting the time in. Like I basically live and breathe working on stuff. Like you said, it's a balance between, oh, they're calling back again. Go away. It's a very difficult balance between family, work, because I have a full-time job, and also getting time to do the YouTube. And I'm just lucky that my wife is really supportive with me and my time. She respects it. I tell her like even though it doesn't make any money, she still gives me the time, because I tell her like, look, I want to treat this like a full-time job. I want Monday to Friday, 10 hours a day if I'm not working, right? Like if I have time off from work, I'm working on this all the time. And it's sacrifices, right? Like I don't get to spend as much time with my wife or my 5-year-old, my little girl. But it's all in hopes that maybe someday it will work, because there's a lot of success stories on YouTube, right? And it's enticing to, you can't help but dream that maybe I could do that. So for me, it's not about the present. It's about what it might be in the future. Like if I keep working my regular job, I've got a pretty good idea of what my future could look like. And it's not bad, but it's not spectacular. You know, I'm not looking at an early retirement or doing a lot of the things that I want to do or having a lot of time off. It's not the lifestyle that I would like. So I'm putting in the work now with a hope that it might pay off in the future. And yeah, because I'm nowhere near that point right now where I can make a living off, not even close.
Yeah.
Like it's, barely even hobby status as far as the income that it brings in. But as far as the time that I put in, over the last, I've always been putting the time in, like for 5 or 6 years. And for the first several years, like it wasn't even monetized, so it was nothing. But I'm keeping the same routine of continuing to put the same time in, and I'm just really grateful that my wife is patient with me and supports me in putting the time into this.
I think just the fact that the support is incredible helpful, because to be able to sit and do it as a full-time job in your mind, which is what you need to do with everything. If you want to be a musician, you got to look at it as a full-time job. You want to be a doctor, you got to go to school. You got to put the years in. You don't, nothing comes, success stories are so few and far, like between, you know what I mean? That the hard work is the ones that matter. So like your success story is building. It's not going to happen overnight.
Mm-hmm.
And if it did, would it be able to be maintained? You know what I mean? Like where you're building a foundation that's going to lead to, you've gained 10,000 followers in a month and a half. I think it speaks for itself. Like that's only going to continue, and then it's going to be 100,000. You know what I mean? Like 200,000, because the knowledge you have there's people who want it.
Yeah.
And I think that it's just that dedication, and I think that it's kind of like awe-inspiring to see how quickly that happens, because a month and a half ago, like you're at 10, and I was like, man, that's amazing. And then talking on the phone last night, you're like, oh, in less than a week, I'm going to hit 20.
Yeah.
That puts a smile on my face seeing a friend gaining that success. You know what I mean? Where most people are like, how can I utilize that? It's kind of more like just seeing your passion. It proves that that's why you're getting further and further ahead. But it's not just because you're like, oh, I'm great at selling a product. Like you're great at selling yourself.
Okay.
And
you're
a wicked product, because
I'm giving a lot of information, and I think it's good information for free. Basically.
Exactly.
And it's going to be, in the future, I plan to monetize it, but it'll be still dirt cheap.
But even if it doesn't pay the bills per se, like there are YouTube personalities that do the same thing that are huge in the music industry, that with the respects as what they provide knowledge-wise. I can't remember his name right now. Long hair, glasses, and he does like guitar reviews, and he's from Toronto. Okay. And he's massive. His wife just had a stroke, and then the entire community is basically helping fund the medical costs. And that's just because the following that he's built, they love who he is.
Yeah.
And that took him, I've been watching him for like 15 years now. He's been doing videos, right? And like, it's not, because of what you're doing is not like not everybody produces music. If you're doing how-tos on how to cook a meal, that's different. You're going to garner millions of views.
Yeah.
But it's not really knowledgeable to the sense where production is such a hard thing to learn. And unless you find a good teacher, it's like school. Like you're not going to want to learn history with a really bad history teacher.
Yeah.
Or math, right? Like you're not going to fall in love with math if the guy teaching you math doesn't care. You care about what you teach, and I think it transcends, like I said, through the screen where people see and gravitate to that, versus the other guys who are like, this is what the product is, buy it. So it's a slow and steady build, but I feel like it's going to hit a point where you're just going to one day wake up and you're at like 1 million subscribers and not realize it happened that quick. And it will turn into that full-time job, because you're not looking at it, you're manifesting it. I hate to say that term, because a lot of people don't believe in manifestation, but it's what you're doing.
Okay.
And there's no stopping it at this point, kind of a thing, you know, like it's what you love, that it's like, how could you stop?
I can see that.
Yeah.
But you talk about like my success going from 10,000 subscribers to 20,000 subscribers in a relatively short period of time. And like looking back at it, like my perspective a few years ago, I would have been like, yeah, I can't, that would be amazing if I could hit 20,000 subscribers. And now that I'm there, like I'll be there in a week or two, or even a few days probably, the goalpost has moved, because now I hit 20,000 subscribers. I'm like, just a few days away from it. And I'm realizing that it's not as glamorous as I was expecting. It's not like I'm not getting all these sponsorships or making a bunch of money. Like it's not, the level of success isn't what I had envisioned that it would be.
Fair.
Because it's still the same grind. It's still almost no money at all. So the goalpost, I mean, sure, a few years ago, the goalpost was 10,000 subscribers. But the goalpost has moved, because I hit that, and it's not even close to accomplishing the goals, that the final goals. And where the real doors open, like I think once I hit 100,000 subscribers, I can't say like the amount of money I make like would be 5 times more. Like if I get 5 times more subscribers, I'm not going to make 5 times more money. It'd be more than 5 times more money, because more doors open for sponsorships and for growing exponentially. Because the growth on YouTube, it's not a steady line, it's exponential. So when you start growing faster, it feeds itself to help you grow even faster until you hit kind of a limit.
Do you see that happening now?
Yes.
How
Yeah.
does that make you feel? Because you keep pushing, you're always going to be pushing your bar. You're never going to be satisfied. When you hit the 100,000, you're going to want 250,000. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so your success is always going to push.
It makes me feel. See, my success in my head, though, it's more of a straight line, even though the numbers are exponential. Like it feeds itself and goes faster and faster. In my brain, like a 5 times increase of subscribers or something like that is only like a doubling of my success. So in my head, it's still a straight line towards, a
You're
few
being hard
years
on
ago,
yourself is what it is.
well, maybe I'm being hard, or maybe I'm being realistic, because I know what my goals are and I know what it's going to take to get there. And it's going to take hundreds of thousands of subscribers to get to where I want to be. Like at least 100,000. Like that's just to like even scratch the surface of my goals. And to really get into where my goals are, it'd be a couple 100,000. And if I look at some of the top performing YouTube channels in my niche, I mean, there are a couple channels that hit 1 million views or 1 million subscribers. So I do think it's possible. And I mean, ultimately, yeah, 1 million subscribers kind of is the end goal. And when you say I'm being hard on myself, like what's percentage is 20,000 compared to 1 million? That's like 2%. I don't know. Maybe I'm bad at math.
I'm terrible at math, so I'm not going to answer that one.
I think, yeah.
It is. It's increments, but that's the thing is it's not.
Yeah, it is. It's 2%, because 20,000 subscribers compared to 100,000 would be 20%. So 1 million, just move the zero over.
Yeah, it's very. But to think that like it started with one subscriber, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
It's like
I remember not my first subscriber, but like my first 3 or 4 subscribers that were people that I didn't know. And you know what? To be honest, those were more exciting than like the 25 subscribers I get per day now, or the 40 subscribers I get a day now. It kind of varies in that range. But the very first handful of subscribers, like when I was at like 6 subscribers, I was more excited about it then, because that was the revelation to me that like people actually like what I'm doing. Like people I don't know where they are in the world. They just watched my video and they liked it. I'm doing something right for at least these 5 people.
And that's the thing too, is like YouTube is such a weird, like we'll wrap up here shortly, but like there's the creation of the content and putting it on YouTube, but then there's the battle of the algorithm and how to get it presented to the right group. Like once your channel's at a size that you're at, YouTube knows your market. Yeah. It's pushing it out, right? But like to get started is the hardest thing. And I find like most people quit before they ever even make it to the point where YouTube finds their market. So it's like, that's why it takes you 5 years. That's why it took you a long time. Like my Broken Cross Paranormal, it's slowly growing. Like I watch it slowly grow, but it's, the happiness and success for me comes from when I see a channel that's bigger than mine comment on mine and say that we deserve more views because of the content we put out is so good.
Okay.
To me, that is a better compliment than getting 1,000 subscribers that don't watch the video or like it. You know what I mean? Like that's confirmation that I'm doing what I love and it's actually good for people and people enjoy it. I think that's more of a success than any money that would come out of it. Like personally, like I don't care for money when it comes to my art. Yeah, it's nice to be paid for what you love to do, especially if you look at it like a job, whether it's production, music, painting. But at the end of the day, what makes me happy is people appreciating what I do. And I think that watching people appreciate what you do just kind of shows that like your knowledge is valuable. You as a person is valuable and warranted and wanted within the community. Because people, yeah, those other channels have 1 million subscribers, but the value of the content. You know what I mean? I can't personally say it's as good. I haven't seen theirs, but you know what I mean? But like, I feel what you offer, it's just, it's going to have to, it's not one of those overnight things. It's 4 more years down the road, you're going to be hitting that goal that you want, because it's just such a niche. It's such a small area of the industry, but it's such a valuable and important part of the industry, because without the production and the audio engineering, no one's going to hear it. No one's going to hear the music. Doesn't matter how good the song is, never going to get out without people like you. And learning that knowledge.
Yeah.
Cato's not cheap. You know what I mean? I can't imagine how other schools
it's like
are.
$30,000 for a 1-year audio engineering
Yeah,
course.
and I mean, like, to give that value of knowledge to a 14-year-old who may stumble across your video and becomes the next Flood.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because, like, there are producers who are sought after.
Yeah.
And, like, I have a buddy I was talking with my last interview. My buddy Riley lives in London, and he's recorded Adele, Mumford and Sons, and he's not even happy where he's at. You know what I mean? Like, he's happy he's meeting these artists, but it's not, the hitting the record button is not, that's not the passion that he wanted. You know what I mean? Like, it's the job, but it's, you've got the passion. Like, you've moved on to where you found it, as where a lot of other people and friends that I have are still looking for it.
And I think you said something that I never previously realized. And that might be part of, I think that's the reason it's doing well, is because what I do genuinely have a passion for helping people save money and learn this stuff. Like, I have a passion for teaching it and for spreading my knowledge. And yeah, I think that's a nice realization that might be actually the core reason why this is working for me.
I think so, because you're an amazing person. And when you sit down and talk to someone, you're very caring. You don't try and rush it. Like, I've talked with other producers who try to, like, almost assume that you know the knowledge because they do. You know what I mean?
Okay.
But producing is like, or like, I'll ask questions about EQing as an example, because I can't fully understand seeing the visual spectrum when the bars are bouncing and all the frequencies are going. How to understand where to move, what I'm raising, what I'm taking away from. And I've had producers talk to me like, I should know what frequencies should be missing or be pushed. And those are things that I think they're skills that producers have that musicians don't. And I think that the knowledge being pushed from other people is a little rigid. I guess is the nicest way for me to try and put this without saying words that I shouldn't. But I feel like you offer a safe space for people to learn things that they don't know, if that makes sense. Because, like, sometimes you can feel intimidated by someone teaching you something.
I try to put myself in a position of, like, I try to remember where I was at 15 years ago and what I knew and what I didn't know. And it's hard to remember what I didn't know, right, from that long ago. But I try to envision someone who doesn't really know the lingo, doesn't know the basics, and cater my videos to that level, so that people of beginner levels or intermediate levels can both benefit from what I'm teaching.
Mm-hmm. I think it's awesome, because, like, I've worked in music industry with a lot of different producers and tried producing myself, and I feel that it's always been something that's very intimidating. But, like, I secretly watch your videos and I learn things, and I'm like, all right, I understand this a lot more. So, like, your audio engineering course is probably something I'll probably sit down and watch before it's deleted so I can watch it.
Yeah, I am going to delete it.
Yeah, because I know there's knowledge in there that I want to learn that would benefit me just sitting at home recording strictly just my hip hop vocals.
Yeah.
How to make them sound better, because I always find they sound hollow. But then you go, how do you unhollow your vocals? There's no video for that. You know,
well, there's a lot of videos for it, but they're surface level, and honestly, a lot of them are counterproductive. Because like a lot of my competing YouTube channels are people at home. They get the views and they get the subscribers, but they don't have a professional studio. They don't have clients coming in. They don't have the experience, and frankly, a lot of them don't actually know what they're doing.
Yeah.
They just regurgitate other stuff that they've seen people post on Facebook or on forums. And there's this vicious cycle of, I'll call it misinformation. I mean, some people say if it works, then do it. But like, even if it does work, there's a better way to do it sometimes.
That's less intrusive, or even could be easier.
Well, it just sounds better, like objectively.
Pardon me. So because we're at our point, if you were to give any advice to an aspiring YouTuber, because that's what you're becoming. You're a producer, but you're becoming a full-time YouTuber. What advice would you give somebody who was at that point where they feel they should give up because they're not garnering the views or the attention that they want right away?
Okay, before I answer that, I have a question for you.
Okay.
Is this a personal question of yours? Is this where you're at?
No, I'll pick your mind on the side, but it's just, okay. I know that there's a lot of younger people out there, or even guitar players who would love to be seen. Well, and they struggle with that first 2-3 years of anything.
So, honestly, where I've learned the most about YouTube is on YouTube. There's so many good YouTube channels, and I've sifted through, I'll just say like dozens, maybe hundreds of YouTube videos about making YouTube content. And some of them, most of them weren't helpful, but you have to go through the non-helpful ones to find the ones that actually are helpful. And there's always little nuggets here and there. And what's helpful for me might not be what the same content that's helpful for another person, right? We watch a video, and what I take out of it might be different than what you or someone else takes out of it, right? But that was one of the places where I found that I'm learning the most, because you had mentioned the algorithm earlier, and understanding the algorithm is a really important aspect of YouTube, because that's what's going to drive your YouTube video, if it's going to do well or not do well. And the algorithm is both complex and very simple at the same time. And the simple part of it is it's designed, like I said, they just want to sell ad
space,
right? So they've got this algorithm that's designed to seek out which videos are good. Basically, it looks at how long people watch the video. If they go after that video, if they watch other videos from your channel, or even if they just go and spend more time on YouTube, how much is your video drawing people to the YouTube platform in general? That's what the algorithm is designed to do, which makes it simple for us as creators, because we just have to focus on, we don't even think about the algorithm, just think about make good quality videos. And if your videos are good, people will watch them. So that's what it boils down to, is because you're competing with like Netflix, other entertainment. Depends if you want to make a YouTube video about entertainment or educational content. But there's a lot of other competition outside of the YouTube platform, including like Facebook, Instagram, other social media platforms, right? So YouTube wants to draw people away from all these other platforms onto their platform. And you got to make videos that are so good that it's going to accomplish that. So, so if I were to give advice for someone starting out, it'd be focus on quality of content, and also don't force yourself. You got to do something that you're really good at. Like, nobody wants to watch a YouTube video of an amateur doing something that they're only amateur at. So I've talked to some people about this who they're like, yeah, I'd like to start a YouTube video, but I don't really know what I want to make it about. Well, then you shouldn't do a YouTube channel if you don't know. If you don't have a specific skill set that you know you can do very well, then it's going to be contrived, it's going to be forced, it's going to be fake, and it's probably not going to succeed. There are exceptions, but as a generalization, it has to be a very specific thing that you're really good at. And it can be entertainment, like if you're a comedian and you're really funny, or just some people just have really entertaining personalities, and they can create a YouTube video about anything. And people like Mr. Beast is the great example about that, right? But there's a few others who just have great personalities, and people love watching their videos more for the personality of the host because it's entertaining and great video ideas. But from an educational channel standpoint, like you got to be offering something at a higher level than what people have other options for.
Fair enough. I definitely think that what you're doing is gonna go places. Like the more like just sitting and picking your brain of it and hearing, because we've spoke before, but getting to hear you talk on a passion about what you're passionate about versus just talking about production and being a producer. It's you can see it. Like I can see the fire in your eye for the channel, and it's really cool to see.
Oh, thanks, Rob.
I want to thank you for doing this because it's.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's been a pleasure.
I hope that there's some nuggets in there for anybody watching too, because I know that.
I'm not gonna lie. There's been some nuggets here for me, like realizing some things about myself and my own growth that, I mean, even I have learned from this interview.
Well, I'm glad that we got to sit down and do it again. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks,
I appreciate it, buddy. And we'll catch you guys next time.